Hi guys, welcome back to yet another video. My name is Uzama and I am a mother to a 22-month-old beautiful baby boy. So today I want to share with you guys how I get Nkanyezi to how I got Nkanyezi to sleep on his own without my assistance, especially at nights, because in the afternoons I still struggle. I have to still put him to bed, but mostly with our bedtime routine it always goes smoothly. We don't have any issues. So I'm going to share with you guys my journey because Nkanyezi has not always been a good sleeper. My family knows I struggled a lot, especially when he was younger. Especially before 12 months, we used to struggle with the sleep. But eventually I got into a routine, and yeah. First things first, guys, just to clear the air out, I want you to know what anything I share is just my experience. It's just a disclaimer so that you guys don't take this advice, and if it doesn't work for you, you come and blame me. Anything I share here is just what I've done research on, and I tried different ways, different methods, just to get what is right. Anyways, so Nkanyezi used to be a really one of those kids who would not want to sleep on their own. Like, he would sleep on my chest, or if I was holding him, or if I put him in his carrier. There used to be like a carrier that I had that I used, which was, I really loved that carrier. Or if I put him on my back when he was old enough for me to put him on my back. So I struggled a lot for up until I think 6 months. I used to alternate with either of those, would see how I got him to sleep, but majority of the time he would sleep on me or on my back. So eventually I did some research into sleep training, and there were different methods that I found. You can Google, just Google sleep training methods. There's different ones on YouTube, on Google, wherever. So I tried one which was called the cry out method, where you leave your child in a room and then they cry for a certain time. If they're not asleep, you go check on them, and then you leave. I stopped on the first day because I couldn't handle the crying, guys. When you're a mother or a parent or whatever, you know how hard it is to hear your child cry. So I said, Mina, no, I'm not doing this. So I stopped. So I continued until I think about 8 months in. That's when I felt like I was ready emotionally to sleep train him. So instead, what I did do is, in the beginning, I would just put him with me in the bed. So he'd lay beside me. I would put him around my arm here. He would just lay inside. And if I knew it was time for him to take his nap, which I'm going to get into, so I would put him on my arm and he would play around until he fell asleep. So how I knew it's time for him to take his nap is I followed there's what is it called, a schedule, but there's different times for different ages when it comes to babies, to know when is it time for the baby to wake up, to nap, how many hours should they be awake, and everything like that. I'll put a picture for you guys here on the side so you can screenshot it. But basically what that meant was I had to time his naps. I had to time how much time he has to be awake, so that I know that he is not overtired or it is not too soon for him to sleep. So I have an app. I downloaded an app. I don't use it anymore. It's called the Baby Tracker. I'm pretty sure there's different ones, but I use that app to track his times for how many hours has been awake, how many minutes, whatever, since birth. So that app I used to use since birth, even though I didn't really get into sleep training until about 8 months, but I used it from birth. You can do this also, because what I know about babies is the earlier you start, the more you are consistent with something, it really helps in the long run. So I use that app and I track the So for example, when a baby is few weeks old, the times he or she is awake is different from when the child is a year old. So Nkanyezi is 22 months. He's going to be 2 in September. So basically he's 2 years old. Now he has certain amounts of hours where he is awake, and there's that's a difference from when he was a newborn. So for example, right now he only takes 1 nap a day, comparing to when he was 8 months old. He used to take 3 naps. So you had to know how many naps your child is recommended to have, because it won't be a guarantee Uti, that's how many times your baby naps, because your baby is different. All our kids are different. You have to set a routine and a schedule based on how you parent or how your child is. So like I said, when he was 8 months old, he used to take 3 naps. So in those 3 naps, I counted Wuti how many hours should he be awake between each nap, so that if he naps, for example, at 7, if he wakes up at 7 in the morning and takes his first nap at 9, I have to know which, okay, so 2 hours he has to be awake. And during that time, I have to make sure Wuti he plays and takes out that energy out, enough, and he also eats enough. That's one other thing that I found that was helpful for me. If a baby has enough calories when they sleep, especially at night, it means that they will have good naps. For me, I'm not saying it's going to be like that for everyone else. So as I said, I had to know how many hours he has to be awake for his first nap, and make sure he sleeps enough. So it happens sometimes babies wake up before they need to wake up, and I used to assist Unkanyezi back. So for example, maybe I put him on my back, or we were laying down and he falls asleep, and then I put him in his bed, and maybe after 45 minutes he wakes up when he's supposed to be sleeping for 2 hours. I put him back. It's either I will put him and then ngimshushuzele or do whatever to put him back. If I know it's important I alale a certain time. If if he doesn't go back to sleep, that's fine. I'll just carry it on his second nap. So that's what I'm just trying to tell you guys. You have to know how many hours your baby has to sleep in the afternoon, know how many hours he has to be awake, and how many naps he has to take in order for you to be able to get the best out of the bedtime routine. So for now, Nkanyezi is 22 months old. I'm just going to relate it to now. When, as I said, I'm going to put a picture of the schedule. You can go with your baby's age. He's 22 months old. He only takes 1 nap, and it's recommended the nap be 2 hours. Unkanyezi sometimes sleeps more. Actually, most of the time he sleeps more than 2 hours, which is fine with us because it works for us. Like I said, create a routine that's going to work for your child and for yourself. So he takes 1 nap. Usually he wakes up at 7, but these days he wakes up at 6:30, which is fine. I rearrange his day around the time he wakes up. So he wakes up at 6:30 or 6 o'clock sometimes, and then he has to be awake for 5 hours before he takes the nap that he has to take. So for instance, he wakes up at 6 o'clock, 6 to 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock he has to take his nap. It won't be exactly 11 on the dot, but 11 is the time I have to know, okay, it's time for his nap. During the time when he's awake, I make sure he's fed enough. I make sure he plays or watches his TV or does whatever he needs to do. When it comes time for him to take his nap, he knows it's time for a nap, and that's that. So he wakes up, he takes his nap, and probably sleeps for 2 or 3 hours, depending on however he wants to sleep, as long as it's enough. And then when he's awake after his nap. He'll be awake for, I think, about 6 hours or 7 hours. Like I said, there's recommended times, awake windows. That's what it's called, awake windows for certain babies. So I created the routine depending on what works for us. And yeah, so with bedtime, because I feel like bedtime is the best is the best time for both me and Unkanyezi. And the thing that really helped me with that is creating a routine. Guys, when you have children, you have to have routine in place, and the routine goes with their child. So when you listen to your child, you see this time the child wants to do this, and then you rotate around that. And I feel like personally that's what works for me. So I set a routine. I do the same thing every day for his nap, for his bedtime. So for example, say he's going to sleep at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock. I have to know he eats 3 hours before he goes to bed. Sometimes if it's even earlier on, but basically just give my child time to digest his food so he doesn't wake up at night hungry. So yeah, he eats his dinner. After dinner, he watches TV or does whatever he does, and then I tell him, okay, say maybe I need to change his diaper first. I tell him it's time to change your diaper and we have to take a bath. It's not always smooth. Sometimes, especially if he's watching TV, he'll cry and not want to go take a bath. That's also fine. Sometimes it's okay. So I take him and we take a bath. After taking a bath, we do a bedtime routine. I put lotion on, clothes on, we sing or whatever we do, and then after I finish, everything switched off, obviously, because he knows it's time to go to bed. Like, his cartoons are not playing anymore. I tell him it's okay, it's time for bed. He would literally run into his room, and then he goes into the bed and wants to climb the cots. I put him inside, and then I give him his blankets, his pacifier, and his milk. Sometimes if he drank his milk earlier on, I just give him the pacifier and the blankets. But basically those two things just indicate to him that we are sleeping. And then I kiss his forehead, I tell him good night, and I leave the room. And sometimes it takes him 30 minutes to fall asleep, sometimes earlier on, just depending if I timed his naps efficiently in the afternoon. So how I got to the point where I was able to just leave him in the room, I basically sleep trained him by doing my own way of doing it, by him sleeping next to me in the bed, and then I transfer him to his cots. And then eventually I did this method where you stay in the room with the child, but Unkanyes was in his bed, but I stayed in the room with him until he fell asleep. So obviously, for it to be able to work perfectly was for me to be able to time his naps and his awake windows effectively. So if I timed it correctly, obviously when he needs to sleep at a certain time, when he's in his bed, he'll fall asleep easier than compared to when I just put him whenever I want to put him. He's not going to sleep because he is not sleepy. So which is a huge point. You need to be consistent, set a routine, and also just follow the awake windows and how many naps your baby needs to sleep, and so forth and so forth. So I would stay with him in the room. He would eventually sleep, but there came a point in time where I felt like I was ready for me to leave the room and for him to sleep without me being inside the room. So I did this, and a few times when I left the room, he would cry, probably for like 15 minutes. Not cry like hysterically crying, just cry because I'm not there. And I knew there's nothing wrong with him, which was why it was easier for me to leave until I think after 2 weeks, where he'd sometimes cry and not cry, he stopped. So the routine, I think after 18 months is when I perfected the routine, the bedtime routine, and we're still using that to this day. So I would also advise you guys, if you do any of these sleep training methods, whatever, make sure your child is not sick or going through whatever he's going through, because obviously if your child is sick or whatever, they need you more than you need for them to sleep when you want them to sleep. So yeah, basically that's it, guys. Sometimes it won't be perfect because obviously sometimes we travel or we are not I'm not in the house where his bed is. If I'm back home, we don't have a bed, we don't have his bed we don't have his bed back at home, so obviously he sleeps with me. But when we come back, I continue with the routine, so it's much more easier for him to go back because he knows how it's done, even though we don't continue with the routine when we're back home. So be consistent with this, guys. Yeah, eventually it will work out. Like I said, try different methods or whatever. So thank you so much for watching. I'm going now. Make sure you also subscribe and click that like button if you found this informative. Thank you so much for watching, guys.